welcome back to another episode of Over the Glass. I am your host, Jay.
And I'm Nessa. I'm exhausted. Guess where I'm at today?
You're in Syracuse
What? How would you know that?
because you gave me your entire itinerary. You literally
Oh yeah.
gave me the cheat sheet for the exam.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's been an experience. God, I was having internet issues, but I got it to work. We're good. I'm ready. This is happening. Hi Ariel, how's it going?
I'm good.
Thanks
I'm
for
good.
joining us today.
No problem. I always enjoy talking sports.
In honor of your favorite team, I am wearing the only orange shirt I have on me. So
I appreciate the support,
Orange behind
and
you.
I'm wearing nothing hockey related, so that's what's even better here.
Are the Sixers in the playoffs?
Yeah, they're playing right now. They're up 3-0 in the series, so they can sweep today.
Who are they playing?
Brooklyn.
Ah,
So they're actually playing right now.
ah. Yeah,
I think
the
it's like fourth.
Bay Area team thing is fun, I guess. The Warriors against the Kings in the playoffs is kind of cool. Sparks a rivalry. All right. So, would you like to give us an intro? How you got into hockey? How you identify?
Okay. So I'll start with that. My name's Ariel. She, her. That's how I identify. I'd have to go probably back quite a bit, maybe to high school or a little bit before. And it was my dad that got me into sports because if you ask my mom, she said I hated it when I was younger. I didn't have any care for it, and then I just got older and got more into hockey and but basically through my dad because that's something that we kind of share is the love of sports. So I'd say he's probably the spark that got me into it.
Was it hockey to begin with, or
Yeah. It started with the Flyers, and then it kind of just progressed from there. And the funny thing is, I'm Philly everything except for football. That's where like my entire family differs. Like none of us are all the same in football. That's the only. Well, my brother is different hockey team. He's a Devils fan. Um, so he differs there. The looks on his face. So
interesting?
he differs in hockey. We all differ in football, but yeah, I'm Philly for everything else for hockey, basketball, baseball. Everything's Philly there. But yeah, I did start with the Flyers.
Who do you root for football?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Um, as a Philly fan of everything else, I'm a Giants fan.
You're a Giants fan?
Yes,
Oh.
I can admit it.
Meh.
I can admit it. That's about the reaction I expect. So you're good.
um, how or why did you join Hockey of Tomorrow? How'd that come about?
So I actually worked with Chanel before on a different project, so we kind of knew each other from that. And she actually reached out to me because she thought I'd be someone that was good for this, and I kind of wanted to branch out just a little bit in terms of the stuff I do write about. I mean, I am passionate in the like analysis and all that in just covering hockey itself, but I kind of wanted to branch out a little bit in like different coverage and kind of stuff like that because it's not stuff I'm doing at the place I am now. I mean, I could if I wanted to, because I essentially do. I don't know. I kind of run that site, the other site that I'm with. So I could really write about that stuff if I want to, but this was a way to be able to keep that stuff there and then branch out kind of on the side. So I liked having that going to a different side of hockey, not just looking at like the games and the players and kind of stuff like that. So I thought it'd be a good fit here.
So, what exactly are you going to be focused on for your writing?
So where it was going to start was kind of focusing on like different charities that the players are a part of. The Flyers specifically is where I was going to start. Um, because they got real into having the players partnered with different charities in the Philadelphia area this season. So I was going to start there. There was a little bit of trouble being able to get interviews for stuff like that. So I kind of moved a little bit away from that. That's kind of primarily what I was going to focus on though was looking at stuff like that. So I think it's still kind of going to stay there. I am working on a piece involving Flyers charities themselves and kind of what they do. So it's kind of going to be in that branch, but I'm honestly truly open to anything that maybe comes my way or that gets asked of me or anything I find. So it was going to start there, but really I'm open to kind of anything in that kind of area, I'd say though.
Yeah, that's kind of why me and Nessa became interested in hockey tomorrow. I mean, we're fans of the game, but there's aspects of the game that not only like the positive parts of it that we feel are like really great to talk about and to highlight, but then there's also the parts where they're not so great for the sport and they do need to be talked about. And I think it's also very important that the stories are being told from the perspectives as well from people who are affected by the ways that hockey and sports in general are not being as inclusive as they supposedly say they want to be. And it seems like Hockey of Tomorrow is like a good platform to kind of marry the passion for the sport, but then also being able to talk about things that aren't just analyzing the game, which can be exciting, but there's quite a lot of that already. And so when we started this podcast, we were kind of like, well, we're not necessarily experts about that sort of stuff. It's like it comes up just to from the excitement of following the game, right? But I think
Yeah.
from our perspective, I think we bring a lot of the representation and the passion for the other parts of the game that do need more attention. So Hockey Tomorrow and that being their platform, their direction, like I think is really cool to see really everybody who's kind of like come together. It's like a ton of people from
Mhm.
all walks of life and really passionate about not only the game but highlighting those things.
Yeah, and that's kind of I think what we've seen so far. And just looking like even when I'm going to pitch an article, I kind of read through all the stuff that people are pitching. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting, a topic, or that's something I'm, curious to read about and stuff like that. So it seems like we've got a great group of people, that are kind of covering all those areas that need to be talked about and should be talked about. Yeah, and don't try to be a fan of three teams. It's not easy.
Wait, you mean like
It's
just
not
within the sport in
Wait.
general or like in hockey
me.
specifically?
Yes,
Oh
in
no,
hockey
we're already
specifically, but at least pick different conferences. That helps. That's
I
me.
messed up there.
I have three. Yeah, three teams. I mean, Flyers are number one. But I also do follow the Blues and the Canucks. A bunch of teams that have no direction right now, so that's great.
All three all three teams I follow are all in the Western Conference, and two of them are currently playing each other in the playoffs.
We love
So
that. We love that.
I'm here for team chaos. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
for me it'd only be chaos if they met in the finals. So
hmm. But then
No,
you
I
don't lose really.
yeah,
true.
no, like every season the Sharks either don't make the playoffs or get knocked out in the playoffs. It's just there I can't
There's no in between.
I can't root for anybody in the Western Conference. It just I'm just so upset. I'm so mad and I'm like, no, if we can't win it in the West, no one
No
can.
one can. I
So,
feel
yeah.
that though.
Mhm.
I do understand that. Yeah,
Yeah.
liking two Western teams is but they're at least in different divisions. So that's at
It's
least
still not
that helps.
far enough.
And I tried so hard to not be a Canucks fan. I was only following see, I like players that I don't want to say are bad, but are like not your star players, not your guys. So I'm a
They need
Luchenko.
love too.
Yeah, I mean he gets a lot of love now too, but I was only following the Canucks for him. And then it's like, no, you actually like Petey and Kuzmenko, and no, you actually like the team. So it was the same thing with the Blues. I followed them for Braden because he got traded, and then it was like, no, you just like them now too. So
Your tattoo that you shared earlier this week makes
yes,
way more sense to me now.
Yeah.
yes,
I was
they're
like,
they're
wait a
all
minute. That's a
Yeah.
A big
blues
fan with a
player.
blues tattoo.
Yep, that's Braden Shen. Yep, my favorite
Nice.
player. He was the only one I was ever gonna get tattooed.
But he was originally on the Flyers, right? Is that why you
Yes,
liked him so
yes,
much?
he was
Okay.
originally. Yes, well, so was Luke too. They were both there at the same
Okay.
time, for a little bit. So yeah,
I'm
and I
kind of the
followed him.
same.
Yeah, I followed
Like
him to St. Louis, and yeah, we went from there.
when the Sharks trade players that I really like, I follow that team that they go to for a little bit. So right now I'm like maybe a quarter of a Devils fan because Timo's there. Like I'm rooting for Timo.
So that's not going so well right now.
No, it's
Uh,
not.
yeah, we'll see who they start in net today. I'm not saying that the goaltender's the problem, but they seem like they're trying to figure out something for game
It's
three.
always the goaltender's fault when you need a
Of
change.
course.
Isn't that what it is? It's
Yeah.
it's always the goaltender's fault. It's not his defense in front of him.
So let's get into some Flyer stuff. Let's get your perspective of how
Ooh,
how did the season go for you? And I
long.
guess I'm
I feel that.
yeah. So how did the season go for you? And we'll go from there.
Okay. Ooh, where to start? I mean, it was a long season, but it was always going to be that way. Anybody that was looking for this season to be competitive probably wasn't looking at the right team. This was never going to be a team that was going to win. Um, they showed that they fight, and I don't just mean like actual fight. That was the problem, that they didn't have a lot. I don't want to say heart because I hate using that word. I hate being like they don't have heart or they have, but they were a team that wasn't exactly feared, and it wasn't exactly a hard team to play against. Teams would come in. You would see it when a team is playing a back to back and you get their backup. It's like they don't fear you. They're just looking past you.
We know what that's
And
about.
this team had this team had looked like that for a very long time, and that's kind of why they brought Tortorella in, was to change that. And immediately, his first interview with us when he was first hired, he immediately talked about the culture, and he hadn't even been in the locker room, and he knew there was a problem with the culture of the team. So that's what he was brought in to do, and I think he did it. Now I'm not in the locker room every day, but I think he did change the culture of the team in the aspect of being harder to play against and always having an opportunity to come back in games. That was something they lacked. Now everything else was what it was. They don't have the high end talent to compete in the league. They have talent, but they don't have enough like superstar talent. Now we saw that with Konechny, he can turn into that. Owen Tippett looks like he could also be a guy that if he keeps progressing can be a high end guy, and but other than that it's they have a lot of young guys. That's really what this was about, was developing the young guys and finding out what they could be and seeing if they were going to be a part of the future. And a lot of them did that. Noah Cates, Morgan Frost, Tippett's another one of those who kind of really showed what they could be for this team. And that's what it is right now. It's developing and finding out, what the team is now that they've actually admitted they're in a rebuild. Like we didn't already know that for however many years, but they finally said the words rebuild. Um, when they fired Chuck Fletcher and brought Danny Briere in, he flat out said, "Yeah, this is a rebuild." Like he wasn't afraid to use that word, and that was kind of what the team was always afraid of using. They're like, "Oh, it's a retool. It's not a rebuild. We don't want to say this."
I feel
But
like you're talking about the Sharks and not the
Sure,
Flyers right
I
now.
was
sure.
gonna
You
say this
about
sounds
the
like it
same
could be a couple different teams. Yeah, this could be a couple different teams.
team?
But that's really what this whole season was about. It was never one of the writers on our site, wrote this season was never about wins and losses. It was about developing. And that's really what it was. And I think by the end of this season, this team kind of showed that this was a young team. They weren't going to make any kind of big run, even though they did for a couple weeks, which people got mad about, and that's the whole tanking draft thing, and that's a whole other conversation we could get into at a different time. But the team showed that they're young, and it's going to take some time. It's whether or not it's going to take a couple years, or as the players told us in exit interviews like a week or two ago. But they've said this all the time, so I'm going to put that caveat in there. They don't think they're far off. Of course, the players are going to say that. They probably are. It's probably still going to be another couple years now, unless they get lucky in the draft. That would be something that's happened to the Flyers before. That's how they got Nolan Patrick in 2017. That didn't work out, but I don't blame him for that like a lot of people do. He had a lot of injury trouble, and I'm not sure he's ever going to play hockey again. So that was a whole other story. But it's really development. That's what it came down to this year, and finding out who was going to be able to stick around and who wasn't. And I think that second part is really what we're going to find out in this off season, because Tortorella has said he knows at this point who isn't cut out for this team, and we kind of know already the names that are floating around: Kevin Hayes, Ivan Provorov, Tony DeAngelo, maybe. I think the most likely one to get moved, Kevin Hayes. He's the one that's really been thrown out, in terms of it. But the Flyers are gonna have to retain a lot on his contract. They're probably gonna have to retain at least half of that contract. But I guess we'll see what happens in a couple weeks. It might happen closer to the draft. But this team could look a lot different next season, and I think that's what's needed. And they need to get younger. They need to give those guys the opportunity, because that's what a rebuild is developing that young talent. And I think we've seen that with some teams. The Devils turned it around within a couple years. The Rangers have done it as well. So it's kind of, I mean, now some of these teams get lucky in the draft. Again, the Devils a great job over there. Jack Hughes, Heischer, all those guys. Rangers as well have developed, I think, pretty well. So it's about being patient though, and not trying to rush this rebuild. So even though the players are like, we're probably not far off, you might be. Now, again, unless you get lucky, then maybe you can turn it around a little bit quicker. Because sure, if you get Connor Bedard, great. Like that could help you turn things around quickly. But it's development. It's being patient and knowing that this is going to take some time. It's kind of really the takeaways I think from this season.
So, what are your thoughts on having Tortorella as a coach then?
See, I liked Tortorella. Now I never got yelled at, so I really was okay with that. But I think he's the right guy in terms of the changing kind of the culture of the room and holding players more accountable and stuff like that. So I like him in that aspect, and he did a really good job of playing the younger players too. I think that was something that people said. It was the same thing people said about Alain Vigneault. Oh, he likes his veterans. He's not going to play his young guys. We did see that end up coming out with Vigneault in scratching some of his young players for whatever reason it may be. Tortorella did bench players. He benched Konechny, Sanheim, but he also benched Kevin Hayes. Tony DeAngelo didn't play the last 5 games of the season. Benched Rasmus Ristolainen. He's a guy that's going to hold everybody accountable. He's not going to just give one guy leeway and not leeway to another. So I kind of like the way he was very accountable, and he was also really good at keeping stuff in the room. Now, us as media, we're going to be like, you bench this guy, why? But he was very good at, that's a conversation I'm going to keep between me and the player. So I like that aspect as well. I think he's been good. I think he's been good for this team, especially in terms of just the accountability and letting these players know, like, I'm not going to take your crap. If I feel like you're not playing up to our standard, you're going to sit. And if you want to talk to me about it, doors wide open. That's what he always said as well, was he's not necessarily going to seek the player out. If you want to know why you were benched, doors open. You can come talk. You can have an honest conversation. But he wasn't going to blast you to the media. He wasn't going to air anything out. He was going to keep that conversation between you and him. So I do like what he kind of brought to the team this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels that you're talking about and that we can relate to as Sharks fans. I'm curious to know, because we're in the same position where they will not say we're in a rebuild, we're in a retool, we're in a restructure, whatever add another word behind
Whatever
it.
that's not
Yeah.
rebuild.
That is not that forbidden word that is like written on the walls, and the fans know it's there. It's just, and it's like when you talk to the players, I will give them that one half it's just hockey talk. They come in there and they just gotta like answer the questions in some kind of format, but you're rarely gonna get a player like a Nico Sturm, which I thought he would give the answers that, at least from a fan perspective, you're like, yes, there's actually like some kind of like personality or life amongst you guys, and you're just not all talking like from the same from the same playbook, right? You're just not like a robot. but I do understand when players are because it comes from a place where they're wanting to win, right? They're frustrated, and if they are just gonna come on to the panel and just like rant for like 15 minutes about it, like I can see that being like not great for like the fan base, not great for the team as a whole. But majority of them are like, oh, we're just around the corner, we're just there. It's just they have to be hopeful for the team, right?
Yeah.
Like in for Sharks fans, I've personally feel like we've been in a decline ever since our Stanley Cup run. Like it started a slow decline, and then we fell off the cliff. But from a Flyers perspective, I saw that the last time you guys made it to the conference finals was in the 09 2010 year.
The Stanley
And
Cup
then
run, yeah.
yeah, and then you guys had minimal success over the last decade, and then you've missed the playoffs over the last 3 seasons. So, like, where do you feel like the team should have started rethinking? Like, our window is closing. We need to start. Like I don't know if you guys were selling off assets in this grand hope of like we've still got it, because I know the Sharks were up until like the last couple of years where they realized, yeah, we don't have it anymore, but we just can't say it. So like I guess I'm kind of wondering from the Flyers perspective, where was your mindset where this team needs to start rebuilding?
And I think that's kind of a perfect question too, where this was the first time the Flyers admitted the rebuild. It was for the last couple years of Fletcher's tenure was it's a retool, it's not a rebuild. We don't want to say this word. Now whether or not Fletcher didn't want to say it or he didn't have management's approval to say it, we all knew. Now I think maybe around the bubble, because the Flyers ended that season really well. Ended like on a 10-game win streak, I think 9 or 10. Went into the bubble, swept the round robin, and went in as the number one seed, which doesn't even seem like it was real at this point. That whole bubble playoffs, none of that seems real anymore to me. And I think that's when you could still kind of see, because they even struggled with Montreal in that series, despite the fact that they won. And then the Islanders just, even though they took that to 7 games, the Islanders just proved that they had four lines that could beat you, especially their fourth line just is able to like wear you down and kind of showed the Flyers. So I think after that maybe is when they probably got, I don't know if I want to say cocky, but we're like, oh, we're right there. We know we're right there. We're still gonna find a way. And I don't know if that was before. I think that was right after the Kevin Hayes signing. I think that was previous summer. I want to say they got him in 2019. Was the 7-year contract for him, and then the Rasmus Ristolainen deal, where you trade the draft picks and then you sign him to an extension, and then you sign Tony DeAngelo to the 2-year, and all of that. So I think maybe potentially after that season is when you could kind of see, like maybe that was just, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Maybe that really wasn't what the team really was. Basically, that was just giving us hope that really shouldn't have been there. So I think maybe after that season is when you could kind of see the cracks and everything, and that's when all the reports. I think I'm trying to remember Elaine Vigneault's last season before this year, especially. I think especially last season. You had it was either last season or the season before. There's been so many bad things that I lose track of what season is which at this point. Because there was a season the Flyers had 8 goaltenders. That was an experience. It would take me a minute, but I could probably name you every single goaltender that they played that season. It was at least Carter Hart, Anthony Stolarz, Brian Elliott, McKenna, Picard, Lyon. I
Wow,
think
that
was
must
that
have been a
season.
while ago because McKenna's retired.
Yes, yes. If I had time, I would go find the shirt. I have a shirt that has all 8 goaltenders on it. I'll have to show you afterwards. Because I actually, yeah, there's a shirt that has every single goaltender's name that played that season, and yeah, it was at least 8 of them, I think, that played that year. It's just been a couple years of like this team needs to tear it down. No, well, not tear it down. I don't think they quite need to do that. I don't think we need a full-on fire sale. Now, some people might disagree on that, but you could just see the cracks coming ever since the bubble playoffs. Ever since that, because they played great at the end of that year and came into the bubble playoffs hot, but then again had trouble with a Montreal team that they probably shouldn't have. And then the Islanders just kind of exposed them, even though they took them to 7. But I think it's been a couple years that you could kind of see that maybe they should have started this a little bit earlier, and maybe they'd be a competitive team by now. But if you ask Flyers fans, the joke is always we're 2 to 3 years away from being 2 to 3 years away. Is the joke around the Flyers fan base, because it's true. It's something that's needed to happen for a while now, and the fact that we're finally admitting it. I don't think it was ever going to happen during Fletcher's tenure. It was never, the rebuild word was never going to come out, and you could tell he was never going to say it. He always deflected away. If you asked him about a rebuild, it was always, well, we have the young talent we think, they just need to develop, and we have these guys in there, but it was never going to happen with him, and why he should have been fired before he was. He should have never got the trade deadline this year, especially because we saw what happened there. This team should have traded James Van Riemsdyk. Should have probably. Now there were other assets you could have traded off that they're just gonna walk in free agency or retire like Justin Braun. Even though he hasn't officially said it, he is. I'm pretty confident he is retiring. You could have given him another chance to go for a cup like you did before. But it was really the James Van Riemsdyk thing. And now I'm not gonna criticize and all that because I think Fletcher did try to trade him at the deadline, but nobody wanted him, I guess, which is a hard thing to say because maybe you played your cards wrong and maybe you shouldn't have waited until deadline day. But that's again, that's a whole other conversation as well in the trade deadline thing, because I know I'm going a little bit off at this point, but yeah, I think it's to answer it with a long-winded response. It was, I think, the bubble playoffs when you really saw it, and that they needed to do this before because they were trying to they were trying to be in a like a win now mode that they were never going to be in. Like those moves they made were never gonna change that team. We're never gonna do anything, especially with the rumored culture around the team and all that. So it was really never gonna be that way and should have happened a couple years ago.
Okay. Since you brought up Braun, and as Sharks fans, I'm curious to know what your experience as a fan has been seeing both Braun and Jonesy play on that team. I don't know
Oh,
if you
Martin
kept up.
Jones.
I don't know if you kept up with the Sharks at all before they went to your team, but like the Sharks got
A
rid of
little
them for
bit.
a reason.
A little bit. Well, we learned that with Martin Jones, that's for sure. We kind of experienced that, and then he went on and it has done great. Was
With
he
the
with
Kraken.
Seattle? Yeah, like that whole and Dave Haxall. That's a whole other.
I'm happy for Jones's season with the Kraken, but I wouldn't necessarily say in comparison to what he brought with the Sharks that he's doing great. I think
Yeah.
he's doing about as much as we would expect him to
Yes.
do. And it's just the
Yeah.
Kraken just have more firepower to back up
Yeah.
the
That's
goals
about right.
allowed.
Yeah, that's about right because you're playing in front of a defense. That's yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same thing here.
But like
Um.
when you guys picked him up, because that was the same season that we bought him out. Now, what was your feeling in terms of, because he was backing up Hart, and for that season,
Yeah.
was that some what was the intent behind signing Martin Jones?
So I think it was similar to when they originally signed or traded for Mrazek or to no Cam Talbot. It was Cam Talbot. Was giving Hart a mentor, someone that
Mm.
had that veteran experience. Because this was around the time that now Hart was stepping into his own and was going to be the leader on this team back there. So I think it was really just giving him a guy that had that playoff experience or just had that general experience that when Hart needed a night off, he could go in. Not that it ended up working. Not that it really would end up working out. I think most times, but I think it really was just the teams are like we need those veteran guys who have that playoff experience. That's the thing, and if remembering correctly, I feel like that was probably the intent behind it. Was Hart was still pretty young. I mean, and he is still pretty young. I think he's only 20. I'm not gonna pretend like I know that. He's in his like early 20s. So he was still pretty young in the league
He's
and still pretty
24.
young. 24. Thought I was gonna be right when I said 24, but I didn't want to fully go for it, but yeah, I think it was just that. I think it was the veteran having that veteran experience behind him, and I think the relationship between them, the two personally, worked, and it just didn't work out for Jones here. But I think that was really the intent, was simply where the coaches overvalued the veteran experience and the playoff experience, and I think that's really all it was.
Jonesy's a great guy. He was
Oh
just
yeah, he was great.
struggling.
He was great in the media too. He was always a good guy to talk to.
But do you feel like he, given what you mentioned about him being kind of like a mentor to Hart, do you feel like he accomplished that goal?
Yeah, I think because Hart kind of struggled at a point because there was and I mean this was after Jones, of course, so I don't know, maybe what happened there, but I know Hart has had some struggles towards the end of the year. He's gotten injured the last 3 seasons towards the end of the year, and for goalies especially, it's a really a big mental thing. For them, most hockey players, of course, it is a mental thing, but for him especially, and especially that COVID season. I know he talked a lot about the mental side of the game. So I think, yeah, having an older guy who had that kind of experience that knew what it was like and played the same position, of course, I think that personally probably did. I can't say for sure. I, would have had to have asked Carter that. And that's asking a couple years ago. And truthfully, I don't remember too much in terms of that relationship, at least. I would say it probably did, just having a guy like that, because I think Hart's probably talked about it before, even just in regards of having a guy with experience back there. I know Brian Elliott, I think for sure helped him back there. A veteran guy like that. He obviously brought a little bit different thing than I think Jones probably did, but I think their relationship, goaltenders, they always talk about the relationship between them and their, I guess, competitor or however they will. But it's always good to have that guy there pushing you to be better, pushing for your job basically. So I think in that aspect, it probably did work for him.
I'd say the Bruins tandem is like peak goalie goals.
That's what you want.
Perfection.
Not even just the goal, not even just like the goalie itself. It's the love for each other and like
The
always
chemistry.
supporting each
Yeah.
other. Yeah, that's what you really want between two goaltenders. You don't want two guys that are like, obviously you're fighting for the same job, but you want to be like, you want him to do just as well as he wants you to do just as well. And yeah, the Bruins are a perfect example of the kind of goaltender chemistry and camaraderie that you want between them.
Jealous of that.
I'm jealous of the
Oh,
Hugs because it looks fun.
yeah. It's cute. Do you have like thoughts on any up and coming prospects that you're hopeful for?
Yeah, and it's perfect timing that you asked that too, with the fact that the Phantoms unfortunately were just knocked out of the AHL playoffs. But I think they've got a lot to look forward to in Tyson Forrester. I think he's one of the guys, and he came up. He got that chance towards the end of the season. I think had 5 points in 7 games, or might have been the other way around, or something like that. He had a point streak while he was up here, and even John Tortorella said he had to temper expectations because they were always going to go back down and get that development. But I think he's a guy there's a lot of excitement around with his shot and what he can do. Sam Erson, again, another guy that got a long stint in the NHL this past season and really kind of showed the Flyers what he can do in goaltending. And he's a guy that they pretty much said will get a long look in the NHL next season. I'm expecting it to be Carter Hart and Sam Ersson next season. I think they're going to move on from Sandstrom, and give Earson that full time shot in the NHL. So I think those are two guys that I think are on the front, the front end radar of potentially making the team next year. Elliot Desnoyers is another guy that I think they're really happy about, and I could see it kind of, especially in the Phantom's last game, that he was all over the place. He was all over the ice getting chances and just couldn't obviously get it to go in. But I think he's another guy they're really looking forward to. Ali Litzel is another name. Like a lot of these guys did get a chance at the end of the season, and even defense, Ronnie Addard, Adam Ginning. It's one of those. We still don't know how to say his last name, but he's another guy that I think they're looking forward to. Um, Addard though did get signed out of college, played I think 15 games last year, and got better as he went. He really got introduced to the NHL in his first game and just got better from it. He learned from it from there, spent the season in the AHL, but I think is another defenseman. There's a lot of guys down in the AHL right now that are going to get a really good chance next season to make the team out of camp because this team wants to get younger and needs to get younger. I think there is a lot. Cutter Gauthier, he's going to go back to college. He's going back for a sophomore year. I think he was a guy the Flyers really wanted to come out of his freshman year. And, Briere did say they pitched the vision to him. They told him what they wanted. He decided to go back to college, and they're happy with that. I mean, what else is he going to say? But I think he's another guy they're really looking forward to after he develops in college. There is a lot of prospects in the system that are going to get a really good look in the next year or two as this team goes into the rebuild. So I think there is some talent in the pool that they're really, really high on and hoping will be able to make an impact.
Because you have a couple of RFAs due for contracts in this
Yes,
upcoming
I
off season.
yes, I believe Noah Cates is an RFA, and I think I have to double check.
You
On
have
Morgan
Morgan
Frost.
Frost, yeah,
Morgan
and
Frost, I thought was
Kiefer
an RFA.
Bellows.
Looking at the guys that they have RFAs, at least on the NHL roster, Cam York's gonna get a contract. I know that. Noah Cates is gonna get one because he's coming off of his ELC. Morgan Frost, I do think deserves more. Kiefer Bellows didn't work. It was one of those low risk, high reward things. Those signings, it never worked out. He never showed anything. Now he never really got an opportunity either. But even in the AHL, he was put on waivers multiple times by the Flyers. Nobody took a look at him. That I just think it was worth a shot. You never know. Former first round pick. I think he was top 10. I'm pretty sure. Never just didn't work out. So I don't think he'll be back. But I think those other guys for sure, especially Noah Cates, because Tortorella, I don't think ever said a bad word about Noah Cates, aside from the fact that he didn't like that he took morning skates. That was probably the only thing he ever said about Cates that was like a criticism. So he's for sure going to be back. I think Morgan Frost earned the confidence of Tortorella towards the end of the year because I don't know if you guys ever saw Tortorella compared him to a toilet seat at one point. Said he was up and down like a toilet seat, which is one way to talk about your player. And apparently, it's not the first time Tortorella has compared a player to a toilet.
Very, very Tortorella.
I think he did that in Columbus, and the player didn't exactly respond correctly to it. I don't remember who it was, but didn't appreciate that. And I could see why, but I think Frost earned the trust. I think towards the end of the year, there's a couple of young guys that are not up this season, but I think still have something to prove to him as well. I know you asked about current RFAs, but even just looking at some of the guys who will be up the year after, I think a guy like Tanner Lazinski is pretty much running out of time. Now he's been injured a lot, and that's the thing. If you ask Tortorella, that's pretty much what he says. But he's also like injured or not, I haven't seen it. And it's similar to a guy like Wade Allison as well, who Tortorella has said he's great. You get him great for long stretches, and then he's injured. So it's kind of guys like that that I think are on the fence as well. But I think most of their RFAs will get signed, at least at the NHL level. There's a lot of RFAs on the AHL side too, and like a guy like Ronnie Attard is up for a contract. He's coming off his ELC. Igor Zamula is another one who just had shoulder surgery and missed the playoffs. He missed a couple weeks before that. They say he'll be ready for camp. Now, are they saying that because he's still technically under contract, or is that hint, hint, wink, wink? We're going to offer him a contract. Now, I think his qualifying offer is like 800K. You're gonna qualify that, and I think they like him as well. The interesting case is when you look at Ivan Fedotov and what's going to happen with that situation because he is a restricted free agent this summer, but he basically got detained in Russia, had to go into the military. It's a whole crazy story. If you have a chance to look it up, it's crazy. So he's over there right now. We don't really know what's going on at this point. We haven't really heard anything. So I
Wait,
think
this sounds familiar.
yeah, it's a really weird, interesting case in terms of like I believe he's playing. I'm not 100% confident if he's playing or if he's serving. That we really don't know. So that I think is going to be one of the most interesting cases of is the NHL going to make the exception of what happened and when because he was supposed to come over. He likely would have been Carter Hart's backup this season, and maybe we never see Sam Anderson. We don't know what he ends up being. but he was expected to come over and compete for the backup job and may have won it. So that's an interesting situation that they'll probably have to take a look at this summer in terms of, is the NHL going to give him that little leeway in terms of the fact, well, you guys expected him to come over and then he gets detained by the Russian military or whatever it was. It really is a crazy story and you have to read up on it because it's a lot of what happened to him when he was trying to come over.
If you were GM, what are the top three things that you would like to see happen in the off
Oh,
season?
you're putting me in a big spot here.
No
Oh
pressure.
boy. Well, I think where they're going is the right step in admitting they need to get younger, and I think that's the first step here. We talking position or just anything?
Anything.
I think you do need to move on from some of these, some of the. I don't know if I want to say Provorov or not. Because teams, there's going to be a market for him. It's a matter of if you really think he's going to change because he has kind of stalled out the last couple years. And if we're just going, I'm just gonna stick hockey in this, and at least in this, because we all know
Well, we
some
know
of the
the
other
other
things.
aspect of it won't change,
Yeah, because
so
I
we'll
I
just.
even wrote about, yeah, that was my first article was exactly about that. So if I'm gonna just stick with that, which sometimes is a little hard as well to just stick on the hockey side, but at least for this, hypothetical, I'll stay with that. I I don't know because he seems to be a guy that needs a partner that's going to elevate his game. We saw that with Matt Niskanen. He looked really good with Niskanen. Niskanen retires. Provorov doesn't look like a number one defenseman. Get Ryan Ellis for 4 games. They look great together. He, I don't know, falls apart. And again, Provorov doesn't look like he's your number one. He's a guy that's going to eat minutes, that's for sure. He's going to be out there 20, 30 minutes and 30 minutes a game. Tortorella loves him in that aspect. He's a guy that works hard. But if he's a guy that's only going to be good when you have a partner that's better than him, is it really worth keeping him around when maybe you know what he is at this point? I think maybe you have to look at that. You have to look at what the market is for him and maybe what's out there and what you can get in return because he's on a friendly enough deal. I think he's getting paid 6.75 until he'll be a UFA after the 24-25 season. So it's a very usable contract. It's really not as bad as it looks. So I think you have to at least explore the market. I'm not saying necessarily go for it unless you're blown away. Maybe I think you have to explore that. I think you have to explore the Kevin Hayes avenue because despite the fact that Tortorella and Hayes are saying there's nothing going on between them, clearly there's something. There's something going on there that isn't working. And I think you also have to go in that aspect. Now, I think he's the likely one to go, and I think probably for the best. Now, he was the Flyers All-Star this season. Should he have been? I don't think so. I think that should have been Konechny. Now, did Kevin Hayes have almost career highs in points and everything else? Yes. But it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like this was almost a career season for him. He started off really good, and then after the All Star break, it just kind of fell apart. Now he was losing ice time, he was losing responsibility, but you have to look at that again in terms of, yeah, you're losing this responsibility, but are you going to rise up to that and show that no, I shouldn't be losing this ice time, I shouldn't be losing this. And it never seemed like he did. It seemed like, I don't want to say pouted. I don't like to get into the mindset of how the player is, but it just feels like he knows. He said that to us as much in his interview. He pretty much knows he's done here. So I think that's the most likely thing that has to change. Is I think you're going to have to move on. You're going to have to admit it worked out in the beginning. Maybe the city loved him, the team loved him. I think the locker room still does really love him, but I think you have to admit it just isn't working anymore. And you're not going to pay a guy $7.5 million to give you maybe not even 20 goals a year. And I think there's talk about D'Angelo, especially with with getting benched for the final 5 games of the season. There's obviously a disconnect there as well because D'Angelo flat out told us, "I don't think I should have been benched. I don't know why I was benched. I don't know why I didn't play." Now that's a whole maybe other conversation him and Tortorella need to have and figure that part out. But if you have this disconnect between you and your head coach where you don't know why you're scratched, or maybe you don't want to believe why you were scratched, I can't go into that. But there's obviously a disconnect there as well where not understanding why you didn't play. Now he did hold himself a little bit accountable. Said, did I have a good year offensively? Probably. Defensively, he did admit he needed to be better. But I think that was another move that you probably never should have made in the first place. I think it goes back to the whole Shane Gostisbehere thing as well, in where you traded him for nothing. I don't know if they ever got him for that trade. I think that was you traded him and a couple picks to Arizona for that. I don't know if it was future considerations, but I don't think it ever happened. You basically gave him away because you
Love
thought he
those
wasn't
future
worth it,
considerations.
and then look what he's done with Arizona. He now maybe it's because it's a team that's in that kind of transition period where he's getting that more time, he's getting that ability, but you kind of saw that where they went from Gossespierre and then they bring in the line and they bring in D'Angelo, who D'Angelo is basically a different version, I think, of Gossespierre without the baggage, essentially. I think it's really what that was. You were just trying to recoup what you lost in Gossespierre, and it didn't really. You knew what D'Angelo was on the defensive end. That was the thing. He was going to be a guy that was going to help your power play, and he did lead the team in power play points. At least defensively, I think he did actually lead the team in power play points. You knew what you were going to get there. Defensively, though, you knew he wasn't good on the defensive end, and you were pairing him with Ivan Provorov, which never worked. Even though I think D'Angelo said it did. If you look at the numbers, I don't think it did. And then, he was on that third pairing with Nick Sealer. And then he gets benched for the final, week plus of the season and didn't really agree with that. So I think he's another player you have to take a look at and see, does he really fit into this timeline of what we want to do? Because you have a lot of younger guys. If I'm going number one, Kevin Hayes, I think you have to figure that situation out by the draft. You have to get it before then because you want to get some assets in before the draft. That's when you see the trades happen. That's when you see those moves. I think he's your number one priority that you're going to have to admit it's not working anymore. We're not paying him this money to be this guy. But you're going to have to retain. You have to accept the fact that you're probably retaining at least half that deal in order to make a move happen. But I think he's where you have to start.
It'll be interesting to see if some of those moves that you mentioned do get made over the season. Like I know for us, I mean, obviously we're looking forward to hopefully getting in on like the Connor Bedard thing. I think
Same.
that's like not gonna happen, just given where we ended in the season. But then again, like all of it comes down to whatever ball gets picked up.
Yeah, I mean, we had that luck in 2017. We jumped from I think 13 to 2, so it's not
Yeah.
completely out of the realm of possibility. I think what's interesting, and somebody wrote this today for us actually, and I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think about it. Because instead of the whole like tanking aspect of it, and where you can tell teams are like, we know we're bad, we're gonna be bad, and we're just gonna basically outright tank, but they're not gonna say the word tank. So, but somebody on my site wrote something about. I guess there was an idea floated around somewhere on a poll, and I don't know if it was Friedman's podcast or the Athletic itself, about a play-in tournament for the number one pick, where you're basically forcing teams to not tank necessarily, but I don't know. It was a little weird to me because why would these teams that are bad want to then play more to basically because the fun thing is, if you win, I mean, you're losing to win basically, because it's the aspect of the 16 teams that don't make the playoffs. I guess to incentivize not tanking, where you'll just play in a tournament to determine who gets the number one pick, and it's whoever wins gets the number one. Runner up gets the second, and then you go, and then the rest of it is you go in how they finish during the regular season. I don't know that the NHL would ever buy that. I don't think more the teams would buy that because why would they want to play more? Like if their goal is to lose, why would they then want? I guess that in turn makes them want to win. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting, a way to go about it, but I
It's
don't
just
know that
such
that's
a
gonna
weird
happen.
play on emotions. Like, well, you're in the
Yeah,
suck bowl. You're,
yeah, that's literally what it feels like.
time to
You're in
win
the
the chance to be good.
yeah time to win the chance. I mean, it's an interesting aspect. I think. I don't
I
know that
think it's a
teams would go
little
for it though.
strange. Yeah.
I don't think the teams would go for it. I could see the NHL going for it because it's more money, because it's more games and all that. But also, when are you playing them? because
Well,
you're
I
not
mean,
going to
I
push
think
back
I
the
disagree.
postseason.
I don't think the NHL would go for that because because what was it, like Bettman or whoever is in denial that teams are tanking on purpose. So that would
True.
just like further the
That
point
would just
that
agree that they
yeah.
are. I know I see that point for sure. I just look at it in terms of money, and that's what the NHL
Yeah.
wants is to find a way to make more money. But yeah, it's that aspect of that. But then Batman would have to admit that these teams are tanking. I mean, come on, look at the Ducks. You're telling me that team wasn't
I try
tanking?
not to.
You're telling me the Arizona Coyotes aren't? You're telling me the Chicago Blackhawks are not tanking. Look at that roster. That's
I'm
not a
jealous
tanking
that they could
roster to
make that
you?
decision.
That they could throw out guys that you've never heard of and be like, no, we're just a young team. No, you're tanking. It's there's no way around that. I just thought it was at least an interesting thing. I just don't know that it would ever happen.
Yeah,
When
I'm
would
leaning
something
towards
like that
probably not.
happen?
That's what I mean. Like I don't know where you would do it too because you're not gonna clash it with the postseason, but you would
Hmm.
have to unless you wait. Like you're not gonna wait till the playoffs are over because now you've had these guys off the ice for like a month and then they have to get back in the game. And like you would have to do it at the same time, and no one's gonna watch. Who wants to watch two teams fight for the number one pick like that? Like, here's two bad
I don't
teams.
know.
We're
I
gonna
might
see
want to
who's the
watch the
worst
Sharks do that.
because you're essentially watching. You're essentially watching. So say we do this and we're in the championship, if you want to call it that. We're watching two bad teams try to
The
win.
loser cup.
Yeah, like we essentially want these teams that are tanking, so to speak, to
It's
then
Stanley's
win.
Toilet Bowl
To
championship.
It's just no. I like the suck bowl. I do like the suck bowl a lot. That's essentially what it is. I don't know. I mean, I think people would watch it just for the fun of it, but I don't know that we could realistically get something like that off the ground. Just more in terms of logistics of when you would play it. Are these teams actually going to agree to it? Because I think they're better off. We're just going to let the lottery take it and whatever happens there, because then it's at least a chance of luck. When you're playing, it's like, well, we know we're bad, so why do we want to play to show that we're bad? When we're probably just going to lose. Most teams will see it that way. I don't know. I don't think it would ever actually happen, but I thought it was at least an interesting thought, maybe, and try to incentivize teams to not tank. But if the league doesn't even think the teams are tanking when they're clearly tanking, then yeah, I don't think you'd ever get that off the ground.
I just wanted to bring up this thing I saw earlier this week. Who is it on the Jets? Was like, he looked like he was eating Go-Gurt, but it's actually
Oh
this
wait, are
thing
you
of
talking
just
about
like
Pierre
maple
Luc
syrup.
Dubois?
I
Yeah,
think it
Pierre Luc
was him.
Dubois. Yeah, I
I'm
saw that.
like, and I
That's
looked
one
this
way.
up, and it's actually a company that makes like athletic related items that have maple syrup in it. It just
Listen,
feels so very
Canadians are weird.
Canadian.
Canadians are weird, man.
But I'm
They
curious
do
now,
some
like,
weird
does that
stuff.
work?
I'd like to. I want to know. Did anybody ask him about it? That's what I want to know. I
It's
know.
pure
Don't.
Vermont maple syrup.
Yeah, it seems like a Canadian thing though. Like that's probably the most Canadian thing you could do on the bench that's not playing the game is eating maple syrup to try and get. I mean, we've seen some weird stuff on the bench of what players do to like get into games and. Well, this one of the Canucks was eating a banana and drinking Pepsi. Like eating the
If
banana directly on the bench. That was the funniest thing because it was Kuzmenko, and then you had Petey look at him like, "What are you doing?" But I think the maple syrup probably takes because at least banana, potassium, the caffeine from soda. Because I think Ovechkin does that too with the
Like
maybe
things
that's
that
a
you would
Russian thing.
typically
That's a
eat
Russian
makes
thing.
sense, but like I've
Maple
never seen
syrup does that
someone.
have like what does that have in it?
I mean, I guess
Oh
it's just like the sugar fast aspect of it,
yeah,
carbohydrates.
that's one way to go about it, I guess. It's just like I want where do you keep that? Like is it just on the bench or does someone get it for you from the locker room? Like where are you keeping it? Is what I want to know.
Keeping it nice and warm in like some pocket in there.
probably the
Oh,
trainer
probably.
handed it to him.
Yeah, most likely the trainer. He's like, here, can you hold this for me? Trina's like, why? Just trust me, trust me. No, and it was probably some conversation like that. Like the boss, like, just trust me on this. I'm gonna take this from you later. Just hold it for now.
I'm sure nothing phases the trainers at this point.
Oh, probably they've probably seen weirder stuff than that. So that's someone you have to talk to. Is an NHL trainer. I'm sure those are some wild stories.
All right, last thing. Let's get your predictions for the cup run.
Oh God, that would have to be me actually paying attention to the cup run. Um,
Well, it's probably
just
better
who
that
I
you're not. So then
just who I
your
think is
opinion
gonna
won't be
make
skewed.
it. Just who I think will make it to the cup final.
Sure.
I don't want to say Boston.
They're
I
a
really
heavy
don't want to
favorite.
say. I really don't want to say Boston, and I really don't. I can tell you what I want to happen for the laughs, and not. But this wouldn't be making the cup final. I can tell you what I want to happen for laughs is I want Toronto to lose because I think it would be funny.
Everyone wants
Be-
Toronto to lose. I want them to
yeah,
get
it's
past the first round, and then they can lose in the second
is
round.
that enough though? I'm curious if that is that enough. Is if they make it past the
After
first
how
round,
many seasons of not
does that
making it
keep
out?
Dubas's job though? Just making it past the first round. That's what I
Oh,
want to
I don't
see.
know about that part.
So yeah,
I don't
so
care
let's.
about that. I'm just saying,
I know,
let
but
them get past the first round for the fans, but then they can lose in the second round.
oh, that fan base would so go nuts. No, for the fun, I want Toronto to lose in the first round because I think another year of stacking up, trading for O'Reilly, Achari, all that. I mean, that's where Luke is right now, so I'm basically rooting against Luke. In terms of that, but in terms of who I think, I really am trying to avoid Boston so hard, but I think they have to. I think it's a turn in term of you have that good of a regular season. I think you have to make it. Well, you can't lose in the first round at least because then like what was the point? I so I mean I don't want to be the obvious and say, but I'm really like I really have to look. I'm like, who is in the playoffs? Okay, let's see. I think the Kraken. I think that's going to be an interesting story to follow. Is what they're going to do, and especially going against the Cup champs. I think will be an interesting one to watch. As much as I'm like, oh, of course it's got to be Dave Hacksaw and all that. I think it would be fun to see them to go that far to be an expansion team that went from being really bad and whatever their draft strategy was bad. Because you could have had Terry. Well, I guess Vince Dunn has worked out for them really well, but you could have had Tarasenko, you could have had Van Riemsdyk, and instead you picked Tworinsky, who hasn't even played for you. I think that would be fun. Um, just kind of looking at the playoffs. I think if I go to the Eastern Conference, I don't know if the Devils are going to do it. They really looked overmatched against the Rangers, so I think they're Carolina looks like it's a team that they always look like a team that are going to make a run, so they're another obvious answer.
They're getting injured up and down the lineup.
Yeah,
Like
that's something that's hurt.
like from when Svechnikov went down for them, and like even before then, when Pacioretty tried to come back, and then he immediately got injured like a week later. I was like, well, okay, not so bad since they've been doing fine without him, but I just thought once he gets into the lineup, it's like game over for everybody. But he wasn't able to do it, and then Svechnikov went down, and then like Teravainen is out for like the entire season. I actually, now that I think about it, when I came home yesterday and I turned on, I haven't even really been following this series in particular. I just don't really care too much. But I turned on the game and immediately the Island scored 4 goals. I was just like, what is going
You're like,
on?
oh, it was me. It was me. I was the
It
one.
was me, your lucky charm. I've
I think
arrived.
that's I think that's an interesting series though too. Carolina and the Islanders, just because of what the Islanders came from. I think when you're a team that barely gets in, like that whole wild card situation between Florida, New York, and Pittsburgh. And listen, I'm happy as heck that it ended the way it did because I think it's funny that the Penguins missed the playoffs. But that's coming from a Flyers fan, so maybe I'm biased. But I think that whole situation too of when you're almost barely getting in, like the Islanders clinched on essentially almost the last day of the season. So I think that situation between them and Carolina, I think that's going to be a good series to watch. I think Carolina's probably going to come out on top of that one. I know they're up 2-1 right now. They're just a team that always seems to be built for the postseason. And even when you lose a guy like Svechnikov, they didn't seem to miss a beat. I think I could be wrong. I don't watch them, but they're just always that team. A Rod Brind'Amour coach team is always going to be built for that. I think. So I think that's going to be a good series to watch. And the Panthers in the beginning were giving Boston some trouble. And now your Boston's been without Bergeron. He might not be back till game. I think they said game 5. I believe Krejci's not going to play another game. Like he's going to be out a second game. Their goaltending situation's getting interesting. So I think maybe Boston, Florida could be another one. Boston again is that team that's just that's always there. They're always built for the postseason again, like Carolina. They're always the team that's expected to make that run. So they're an easy team to pick. But what Alex Lyon has done for the Panthers, essentially dragging them kicking and screaming into the playoffs. I love Alex Lyon. Things didn't work out for him in Philadelphia, but he's always been a great guy to talk to. He's very insightful, and he's just a guy that you want to root for. So I think, at least him specifically, I don't know about the Florida team themselves, but he's a guy I like rooting for in terms of his success and what he's been able to do. But I think those two series in the East, I think are going to be fun to look at. Kreider's gone off for the Rangers. Tarasenko, that was a really great pickup for them as well. I don't think Patrick Kane has done a whole lot for them since he came over. I think he scored in that second game.
I think he got 3 points last game.
Yeah, so he kind of came alive at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna say they're gonna run over the Devils, but they're kind of looking like they're going to. The Devils are up against the wall at this point. They have to figure out what's going on. Because they have the guys that can do it. Jack Hughes had an incredible regular season. He's one of the guys that really led for them, but they just look like they're completely overmatched against the Rangers. So if they come back great, I don't think they're gonna. They could prove me wrong, and maybe this is what you need, Devils. You're gonna hear me say you're out of it. You're not coming back. Here's your spark to come back and win. That's what you need. I'm sure that's what they needed was for me to
They need
tell
a
them.
Flyer fan to not believe in them to
Yeah, because
really get them going.
I think the Edmonton LA series is another one because Edmonton's
That was
again another
surprising
team.
me.
Edmonton's another team that's like, are you ever gonna get over that hump? You have
They're
Connor
currently losing
McDavid.
the series
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
Canada
you're down
has
2-1
collective anxiety when it comes to the playoffs.
over the Oilers, especially. I think that's another team that's like, when is enough enough? Because you have the best player in hockey, and yet you can't help him. It's always their problem has always been defense and goaltending. Is you've got the offense, but you don't have anything to back it up. I think that not funny. I think that's just predictable for them to get in like that and then lose in the first round. I think that's another predictable. But LA's been a really big surprise too, and they're another team that won a couple cups, was really bad for a little bit, and then got good. So I think they're another team that you almost kind of root for. Because you're like, you were that bad team that turned. Well, I know you guys can't. I know Sharks fans can't. Trust me.
In
Trust me.
this
I know you guys
series, I'm
still.
probably rooting for them, but
I know you guys
outside of
might.
it,
You guys might still have PTSD from that series.
I'm fine with the Kings winning that series. I think just from a team chaos perspective, I would laugh about it. And I'm actually kind of interested in watching Corpusalo, mostly because I don't really follow the Columbus Blue Jackets. So when they acquired him, because they traded away quick, they
That
had
was a whole situation in and of itself too.
I would love to see the Kings advance and for Vegas to advance and just make it a whole soap
And battle
opera.
it. Oh,
I
that
would
would
love
be.
it.
I think the
But
NHL wants that too.
they traded away quick, and then their guy that they were grooming to take over quick, he's now down in the HL. So the fact that they acquired Corpusalo, I'm just interested to see how that works out for them now and then in the long run, because it just seems like so many of the teams this season in particular just have all kinds of goaltending problems, whether it's injuries or just when the Oilers acquired Campbell, and he's not even the starter. You're paying him $5 million to back
Didn't
up
we?
your.
Didn't we expect that though?
I mean, I didn't know a whole lot about it. Like when we had a friend of ours, Emmett, who was talking about the Leafs, it just seemed like they weren't wanting to pay him because of that one season, but I didn't exactly expect him to back up an AHL goalie who, granted, I do like Stuart Skinner, but I did
Oh
not see
yeah.
this coming. I saw him like replacing, they moved on from Mike Smith and who was the other guy who was on the Oilers last season. I expected that. I did not expect him to take over Campbell's position.
I don't know that I necessarily expected that per se, but I think you always kind of knew in the back of your mind, well, Campbell couldn't really get it done with the Leafs, so you're putting him in another situation where you've got the offensive talent, but you don't have the defensive talent. I think that was a similar situation to the Leafs as well. I mean, I've only paid attention to them a little bit, um, because of Luke and because of O'Reilly, because I was always a big O'Reilly fan as well. But I think that was a similar situation for him. Was putting him in that situation where you have the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl in terms of your Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, but you had a defense that wasn't going to be good, and you were basically putting Campbell in the situation to essentially be in that same similar situation. So I'm not necessarily surprised. I mean, Stuart Skinner's had an incredible season for them over there, and I know there's a lot of talk of people that think he should be in the running for the Calder and um that kind of stuff. I haven't watched him enough to know truly if he should be. I'm sounds like he should be, but I don't know too much in that aspect. But yeah, I think I'm not as surprised that Campbell. I don't really know what happened necessarily if he just fell apart or they just went, well, Skinner's better. We're just gonna play the hot hand. But with a guy that had a track record like that, I'm not exactly surprised that it turned out that way. But it's another situation, like as you mentioned, the whole team's having goaltending problems in the playoffs. That's really when your goaltending gets exposed, and when you're coming in like that. And I think for Corpusalo, I think this was a good opportunity for him as well to come talk about another team that was tanking without actually saying they were tanking was Columbus.
I
I
mean,
mean,
they got Goudreau and they have
yeah,
Laine.
how do you sign Johnny Gaudreau and you still are the worst one of the worst teams in the NHL? Now the Johnny Gaudreau thing is another Flyers thing that probably should have happened and didn't happen, but that wouldn't have changed anything here, and I think they're probably better off for not having made that deal. But yeah, that's another situation where Corpusalo was getting a chance to come in to a team, a young team, but a team that was good. I guess I'll just flat out say that was actually good. So I think that's going to be a good situation for him to be a part of with the Kings. I think the Kings could. At least we've seen that they've won 2 overtime games and they've come back in both of those games. I think the first one they tied it within the last 10 seconds, and then ended up winning that one in overtime and won the third game in overtime. I heard there was controversy in that one, but I don't know exactly what happened.
I didn't watch that
Something
game,
with
but
Trevor Moore.
I saw people analyzing the high stick, and I just thought, like,
Yeah.
are we really retweeting this like slow mo
Yeah,
video
I'm
of
like, I don't know if that had a big. I'm assuming that had a big play on the game. I don't know because they even asked Trevor Moore about it, and he's like, I don't even know if I touched it. Like, so I'm assuming that had a play on the game. But regardless, the fact that the Kings are up 2-1, I think that's great. I think it's the Kings team too that is really showing a lot. So I think that's another team like the Leafs. Like if Edmonton loses in the first round, you're not blowing it up. That'd be funny, but you're not blowing it up. You're not trading Connor McDavid. You're
some
not doing
aspect of
anything
it
like
needs to
that.
get blown up because they
But you've got
know
yeah.
because you've got McDavid for how many more seasons? Like they're
And
in
what's the
desperation mode
point
right
where
now.
McDavid is like I've had enough. Like I'm
Does
tired.
it?
I'm
Will he say
tired of
that
this.
though?
I don't think he's the guy that will say it outwardly. I don't think he's the guy that's gonna say it. Um, but I think you have to get that thought of, is there a chance that McDavid could have could say enough is enough. I'm tired of being the only guy. Now, I mean, he's got Draisaitl. He's got some other guys on offense. I think. I don't know for sure, but it seems like that team. It
So,
seems like that's just
he
McDavid and
says two
Draisaitl.
guys and the rest of the team.
That's what Edmonton's been for how many years now? It's just been McDavid, Draisaitl, and a bunch of guys. It's McDavid dragging this team. Again, you talk about dragging a team, kicking and screaming. That's what McDavid does with Edmonton every single
We
season.
know a little bit about dragging a team this season.
Mm, trust me,
The San Jose Eric
this
Carlson.
season was a drag. Oh my god, yeah, Eric Carlson had a hell of a year too, and
Oh
that's
my
what's such a
god.
shame too, is he had that kind of year on that kind of team. But there's a whole bunch of series that I think have a lot of intrigue in it, and I think I'd like to see those young teams. Because you've seen the Boston, you've seen even like I said, Carolina's always a predictable team usually. They can make a run, but you want something. You always want something different. You don't want these teams that are always winning, that are always making it to the Cup final. Boston, I think, might have to, just because that was talk a lot before was you can celebrate the great regular season and take away the playoff aspect. Like doesn't, if this team somehow loses in the first round, I think you've got to talk about it. I think if maybe they lose in the conference finals or before then, it is what it is at
At
that
least they
point.
won't
But
get swept.
yeah, like as long as you don't get swept in the first round of a team that you had like an historic regular season, you broke all these records. I don't know. I don't think you have to necessarily win it all, but you've got to at least get past the first round. But I think we see those like the Kraken, the Kings, other teams like that you don't. Obviously, the Kraken are still too new, and obviously would be a different face in the playoffs. But I think those teams like that, you want to see them make it. So I want to see the Kings get past Edmonton. I want to see the Kraken find a way to get past the defending Stanley Cup champs too as well, because Colorado's a team that's had a lot of issues this season. The whole Landeskog situation was just so weird because I don't even know what happened. He just
Yeah.
like he never came back. And maybe that's shades of Ryan Ellis and Cam Atkinson for me, that it was like you never knew. Well, I think Landeskog had surgery. I just don't remember on what, and just never seemed to come. There was never any good reports on that. But I think seeing what the Kraken have done, despite the fact that I don't understand it, in the span of a year, how they turn things around. I think team like that, like I said, the Kings, I think would be good to make it on to the next round. I think Boston's gonna find a way. They just will. It's just who they are as a team. You don't. They're the team that I think, unless you're a Boston fan, you're rooting against. They feel like that team that everybody else is like, please be done. Stop winning. We're tired of you being the top team every year. Um, I think the Rangers Devils series. I think either one of those teams would be good to move on. I think it's probably going to be the Rangers, but if the Devils are able to make a comeback, that's great for them. But I think those teams, like you don't want to see the predictable teams making it every season. So I think those teams that have really turned it around in these last couple of seasons are the teams that I'd like to see, especially make it on. I just don't know that it's going to happen. It would be nice, but I don't know necessarily that some of those teams are going to be able to overcome those, the predictable teams that are just built for the postseason, especially.
Yeah, that's why we're Team Chaos.
We're always team chaos here. Absolutely. I want to see all the top teams go down, just for the fun, just for the laughs.
So I root for the Avs and the Kraken outside of the Sharks, and so it was really hard to pick who I wanted to win that series. But I think I want the Kraken to win it because they're the underdogs.
Yeah, that you always want the underdogs too. As much as I don't want to root for Dave Hacksaw,
He means
you
nothing
will,
to
I
me,
guess.
so
Well, yeah, he means yeah. That was another season in Flyers history.
I'm rooting for Team Chaos in that series. I am indifferent to both teams. I would like to see the Leafs get out of the first round, especially now that with Hedman and Cernak out as their
I
top
know
pairing.
they said Hedman skated today. I don't
He
know.
skated
Yeah, I don't know what
yesterday
the
in
prognosis
warm-ups, but they
is.
still didn't play him. So
Yeah, I
whatever
don't
might be
know.
happening
Yeah,
there, I think you don't have another game like game two. That just looked horrendous from the Bolts
yeah.
end.
And the fun part
And
was those scores were almost identical too. It
right,
was like 7-2, 7-3. It was like you're not gonna have that every game.
I think that they've improved their roster in areas
Oh,
that
for
they
sure.
need to, but yes, somehow they figure out a way to just choke
To leaf
in
it.
the first round.
The Leafs always
So,
find a way to leaf.
so those are my closing thoughts, and I'd like to see Timo get success. I have no idea what the Devils are doing with their lineup because he's getting, and I will not stand for any Timo slander from the media, from the New Jersey Devils fan base, because Timo played amazing on a crappy ass team for seasons. Top scorer.
Yeah.
So you just got to figure out where he's six in your lineup. And granted, he just may not, but he's your problem now. So
He's your issue. He's your issue
took
now.
the
Figure it
bait.
out.
We weren't going to be able to sign him, at least from my perspective. And so,
No, probably
you
not.
know, but it would be great to see him get success in this playoffs, or potentially next season, and the benefit for the Sharks to get the first round picks that they
Oh yeah,
that
because I
they
was gonna
gave
say,
us.
was there condition? Yeah, I was gonna say, was there conditions in that?
Yeah,
That probably
Yeah.
they
might
have
not
to.
be met now.
They have to make the Western Conference either. No, sorry, the Eastern Conference final either this season in the postseason or next year.
Okay, they could do it because I don't think it's
So
happening this season.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
thanks.
at this time, I don't think it's going to happen, but we have another year that, we could benefit from that trade. But of course, I'm always going to be rooting for Mika Zibanejad. So, I don't,
He's a guy.
either way,
I think he's a
this
guy
series
who
shifts will be good for me.
I know, and I realized going back to the Western Conference in that Colorado series real quick, I could never root for Colorado. I could never root for Colorado for what they've done to the Blues. Now, whether or not that's the Blues' fault or not, I'm not here to discuss that because it might have been. But yeah, I can't root for Colorado. I really just thought about that. So no, tracking over
I
that.
can't root for the Blues because there was a Sharks Blues thing going on for a little bit.
Was there? Was that before I paid
Yeah,
attention to the Blues? Maybe.
maybe because
Oh, I
they
don't
went
know.
up against them in the Western Conference in 2016 and in 2019, where
That was a big series.
Ryan Reeves was on the team in 2016 and he injured one of the Sharks players
That
real
I think
bad.
was right before I started. I think because I think that was the season before Braden got traded there. I don't know. Maybe you'll have to tell me later because I don't remember
And then
that.
2019, there was that whole hand pass thing that the Blues fans
Oh,
still will
okay,
not let
yeah.
go.
Well, I have a different opinion of that, so we won't. We won't get into that one.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ariel, for coming on
Welcome.
today and chatting hockey with us. And good luck with your other sports in the
Well, the
Philadelphia
Sixers
area.
did sweep. The Sixers did sweep, so we're moving
Nice.
on to play Boston, which is going to be an experience.
Freaking Boston is everywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think that's going to be a good series in terms of kind of if the Sixers can get over that hump as well. The Phillies, it's still too early in the series for that, but we'll see where the Sixers go. But they did sweep. I got that notification during the podcast. I was like under the table, like yes. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes from here. But yeah, I did think it was funny. I came on here to talk hockey. I was like Sixers hat, Sixers shirt, Phillies hoodie. And I was like, we're not even supporting anything. You can see in the background maybe a little bit, but I was like, I found it funny. I came on a hockey podcast wearing nothing hockey related.
You shift
That's
gears.
okay.
You're in the off season now for hockey.
Oh God, I need to be in the off season for hockey. That was too much. That was too much of a season.
Know what that's all about. All right.
Relatable.
Okay, and that's it for our episode this week. Thank you, Ariel, for coming on, chatting with us today. And as always, I'm your host, Jay.
I'm Nessa. Thanks again for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.